rolling. So, welcome to the Intro to Sports Science here at Eastern Kentucky University. Mike Lane, and today we're lucky enough to be interviewing Brad Gillingham, one of the greatest raw powerlifters I have, or powerlifter in general, that I have ever seen, along with an incredibly humble person, and we're going to let him tell a little bit more about his story and otherwise, but first we're going to start off by talking a little bit about the sport of powerlifting in general. And recent date, we've seen a lot of raw records being broken. I mean, now we've got guys that have squatted over 1,000 pounds with only knee sleeves on. So first question to Brad is, why does he think we're seeing these numbers being broken and this rise in raw powerlifting in general?
Well, first off, thanks for the opportunity to interview with you today. It's always a pleasure to be able to talk about strength training and just the whole aspect of weight training. I think the big one that's amazing to me would be the squats.
Mm-hmm.
To see these incredible squats that, I've crossed about 3 different generations of lifting because I'm 50 years old. So when I first started going to Worlds, there was no raw powerlifting, so there was no opportunity for that. And the equipment was pretty limited, back in the day of 0 to 20 pounds out of a bench shirt for most people. They truly were just a nice protective piece of equipment back then.
Mm-hmm.
Squat suits that were not anything compared to today's suits, and wraps weren't the same. But that being said, if you saw a couple of 400 kilo squats with, wraps and the suits of the day back, in the 90s or early 2000s, that was rare. I mean, in fact, my squat, due to my height and knee injury I had when I was younger, has never been a real strength for me. But I was able to hang in there.
Mm-hmm.
These low 800 to mid 800 squats. I mean, that was enough to get me carried through so I could bench and deadlift back when I was doing more geared meets.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's just crazy to see, Ray Williams squatting 1,000 pounds, Lane Sumner over 900. And, I don't know, last year, I think at the Raw IPF Worlds in the heavyweight class, there were, I don't know how many 800-pound raw squats there were. It was incredible. So I don't know what to say on that. I think maybe if people are just able to push themselves harder without the gear now, and it's just, I don't know if it's evolution or what it is, but the squats are kind of a real mystery to me. They've really gone through the roof.
Yeah, if I didn't see the videos and everything else or witness some in person, I would not believe that what these people are doing is even possible.
I mean, I remember when I first started going to Worlds, and I was facing very high rate from the beginning because I had such a good bench and deadlift in there. But it was odd, you saw the great Victor Nalikin from the Ukraine, squat 881 or 400 kilos without a belt. Some of those guys didn't wear belts, but they had the suits and the wraps on. That was a great squat. And, to see a few 900-pound squats, Zydrunas Savickas, back when he was powerlifting IPF, he was approaching that 900-pound squat. That was an oddity, but that was in the suits of the day, knee wraps, and a belt.
Mm-hmm.
So that one is just really strange. It's just incredible to see how high those numbers are. Now the bench, because again, that generational gap. So, those new bench shirts in the IPF really didn't come in until 2002, and then they really just kept getting crazier and crazier every year after that. So prior to that, those shirts weren't aiding people that much. I still don't know if the bench has improved that much raw as it was in those 80s and 90s with either no shirt, back in the time of like Ed Cohn and Kowalski and that group. Mm-hmm. Most of their careers had no shirts. Mine early on, IPF and the guys I lifted with, Dave Ricks and Ray Ben Rado and Sean Coleman and Even Tony Harris early in his career, great Gene Bell. The shirts were real were very minimal. And so the guy was benching, several of my gold medalists in the bench at Worlds were 573, 589, 600. In fact, my first 600, there had only been a handful of people who had done 600 in the IPF. But a lot of that raw was within 10, 20 pounds of that. So I don't think the bench has progressed as much as the squat has.
Yeah.
In the deadlift, I don't think it's progressed at all, really, raw. Because, you're seeing some of the guys that are at the tail end of their career were doing raw meets now. Maybe they're not lifting as much. Using myself as an example, I had pulled 854, 859 raw, in geared meets. But, I was 48 years old when I did my last raw world meet. So, the deadlift had dropped off a little bit. But I don't know if the deadlift is really, I still think there's not much change in the raw deadlift or bench, but the squat's incredible.
850.
Did you agree with me, or I don't know? Do you think I'm right on that? I don't know if you.
I kind of the same thing. I've got just questions because then you hear some of these guys talk about their training, and it's kind of the whole nothing new under the sun. You and I have talked about the old-fashioned 5x5 and the effectiveness of getting in a decent mix of intensity and volume, and and some of those guys, they're doing that in USAPL, so they're about as drug tested as you're going to get at meets. So it's
sure we're all water drug tested now and having to do athlete locator forms and all of the same kind of testing as you have in the Olympics. So it is pretty strictly tested. But in the prior to when there was shirts, obviously you did raw what you're going to do in the meet training. With those early shirts, when I was doing 600 pounds with the shirt, I was for the most part hitting that 600 at least for a touch and go raw prior to the meet. And that's the way most people were. What they could do with those early shirts, unless you had a real strange build, is about what you could do touch and go. Maybe add 10 pounds, real close to what you could do touch and go would be what you could do in a meet with the shirt. But that squat's incredible.
To say the least. So, what originally got you into competing in powerlifting?
Well, my dad is in the Green Bay Packer Hall of Fame, and his rookie year with the Packers was Super Bowl I, played in the Ice Bowl, Super Bowl II. He's part of the great Green Bay Packer sweep, power sweep that they had. He was offensive right guard most of his career. So we lived in a small town, Little Falls, Minnesota, population about 8,000. Back in the 60s and 70s, there weren't hardly any gyms anywhere outside of the bigger cities. And so all of his training was done in our garage or our basement when I was growing up. So, my brothers and I, from our earliest years of memory, could remember Dad lifting at home in the winter throughout the spring, getting ready to go to camp in July every year. So we were always around weights, and we trained with weights for other sports back in school. And they used to show some of the powerlifting back in the day on Wide World of Sports, and we watched that. World's Strongest Man, we were fans of that. And so as we kind of moved out of our normal athletic type of events, we moved more into strength training and just got hooked on powerlifting, my brothers and I. And my dad was always, before he passed away, was always there coaching us at all of our events. I traveled the world with my dad.
Really?
So it was just a big family event, yeah.
That's awesome.
My dad went to everywhere. Japan, all over Europe with me, South Africa, traveled the world with me.
So, random aside, but how the heck do you guys even fit in an airplane seat?
Not very good. um, you know, got to find the aisle, and you got to hang halfway out in the aisle, and then you got to get up and walk around a lot. So,
Because I know you and your brothers, and obviously your dad. I mean, you guys are all well over 6 foot, and definitely 3 bills. Or so that is not a small person to have to ride next to if you and your dad are sitting shoulder to shoulder for 12 hours across an ocean.
no, we always made sure that we didn't sit by each other. Sit across the aisle or the row behind, because there's just no way you'd want to sit with my dad and my two brothers in the same aisle flying across the ocean. Yeah, my brothers traveled quite a few of my meets, and then it got to a point where Carl was competing in World's Strongest Man and doing a lot of travel around the world doing strongman, and at about the same time I was at the peak of doing my travels, so we didn't get to always see each other at some of the events, but usually my dad would travel to a lot of this stuff.
That's awesome. How'd you guys all kind of find your way into your own little niche of, strength sports?
Well, I think, my older brother and I, Carl's 1 year older than me, we just both started powerlifting. We had people in our small town that were doing some powerlifting, so we started powerlifting. And then, I don't know, Mark Philippi, good buddy of ours.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, he was a longtime UNLV strength coach and very good strongman,
yeah.
The strongest man he's had for many years. He kind of made the move over to strongman in about '97 and brought my brother. Carl was interested and started doing it with him. And I was really interested in doing it too. I would train that stuff with my brother, and my younger brother Wade would train too, but I was really getting into where I was 97, the first year I went to IPF Worlds. I got second that year, so I was really trying to chase that world title, and trying to train for both didn't work. So I kind of stuck with chasing my IPF dreams of world championships, and Carl and Wade went more towards strongman.
Nice.
And then of course I had my couple big strongman meets, the Arnold Classic Strongman, and I ended up tearing biceps 2 years in a row.
Ugh.
And so I kind of moved back into powerlifting. But I had imagined back in that day, I really thought that was going to be my transition would be in strongman. But I unfortunately got unlucky with those biceps, and then decided I would be safer just to stick with powerlifting.
Mm-hmm. About how long did it take you going through the bicep rehabs whenever each of them popped?
Oh, it was not the recommended procedure for me. I competed both times, 17 or 18 weeks afterwards at the USAPO Nationals, and both years was able to get second place and lift enough that I made the team as an alternate, and then went on to compete at Worlds both years. And the first year, 2002, this is basically before the gear really changed. So it was 2002.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to go over 2,300 at Worlds that year, which there weren't many 2,300-pound totals back in that day. And that was my best total to date at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Was about 7 months after bicep surgery.
Gosh.
And I deadlifted 854 raw in Trenčín, Slovakia at the Worlds 8 months after bicep surgery.
And this is your double overhand hook grip?
Double overhand hook grip.
Wow. That's impressive. So you're saying if you tear both your biceps, it's an easy way to deadlift about 850 or more? Is that the gist of it?
Yeah. Not the recommended route, but it worked out, and I tell you, it was really nerve-wracking. The first one, the Nationals, 17, 18 weeks, I just tried to pull the least amount I could. But the second year, I had to pull a little more. I pulled 810 the second year. First year was 771. The next year was 810. Both injuries were like at the same time approximately. At the Arnold, which is always what is that? The first week in March usually.
Yeah.
And so I didn't hardly do any deadlift training at all at that point before nationals. But I was able to do a lot of 5x5 squat training, so I kept my back strong.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So, and obviously you kind of talked about it with training with your dad, but who are the big inspirations or kind of the peers that you learn from in the sport?
Well, my dad, of course, we talked about that. My brothers, were really big inspirations, all three of us training together. But, just a number of guys. I used to be a real Powerlifting USA junkie. I would read everything cover to cover. I mean, IPF is what I was interested in right away. And, just reading the names of guys that eventually become good friends of mine, but the Kurt Karwowskis and the Gene Bills and the Ed Cohns and Bill Kazmaiers and Dave Ricks and even Ricky Dale Crane and let's go on and on these names that I would read about. Wade Hooper at that time. Sean Tolman, me and him kind of broke in the same time. We're very good friends. All these names I read about, I kind of just try to envision trying to get there someday. So, there's a lot of names in there. The one thing I really did is try to read and learn as much about the history and as much about training as I could. So, try to learn from reading articles and talking to these guys. We're just all normal people. Everyone,
Really? I've heard other stories than that about Kurt Kowalski and a couple other names you listed there.
Yeah, Kirk's a little crazy. I do that. Good guy, though. We've been doing some seminars together with Marty Gallagher.
Awesome.
Purposely Primitive, Marty Gallagher. And another guy that was a good influence. Marty was writing a lot of articles when I first started competing. And really always was very kind to me, helping me out, writing articles, covered me in the magazines and talking to me about training. So.
Yeah, because he also handled like Cohen and some other, big names at that time.
He worked with a lot with both Cohen and Kowalski, but primarily Kowalski. He worked with a lot. Marty did, and just his list is really long. All the guys he's worked with over the years.
Awesome. So, given all of those folks, I guess, I'm not trying to make you pick who's the most important, but what do you think is the most important thing that you learned in general from all the people you've had a chance to work with and obviously compete with and compete against?
That's a pretty good list. It's not real long, but first keep it simple. That's a big one, And then this is kind of, I don't know if this is a Brad Gillingham original or not, or if I stole this from somebody, but I used to always say, all good thought-out programs will work for a while, but nothing works forever. And so, you always got to keep learning and tweak your program. I think, it's to steal something from Louis Simmons, one of the things, and there's some different ways of training between Louis and what I did, but I really think there's a lot of great ideas there to be learned from everybody. And one of the things he always did with his guys was he emphasized working your weak areas. And people don't always like to do that because it's not as fun. I mean, if you're real strong in something in the gym, then you kind of want to show that off and keep getting stronger. But I think a real secret is what's weak. Where am I weak? Early on, I was weak in the legs and weak maybe in glutes. And so a friend of mine, Scott Save, who used to have Safe USA, sold belts and shoes, he started working with Olympic lifters. And he said, hey, you got to start front squatting, Brad. You got to start doing RDLs. Front squats and RDLs, that's kind of Olympic. Yeah, look at the back position. Well, then I started competing overseas. I looked at these Russian and Ukrainians that were former Olympic lifters, and I'd see this perfect back position they would hold. And yeah, okay, I'll start doing RDLs and front squats. Those were huge additions to my program that I added in. And then just trying to work weak areas. Where are you weak? Is it in lockout? Do more rack pulls then. Is it in leg strength? Or you got to do more front squats, more 5x5 squats. How do I keep from getting injured and get these injuries? Well, I got to get my shoulders stronger. I got to build this armor around my bench press. I got to get strong shoulders, strong upper back, keep my shoulders strong, and my bench press strong. And so just learning, joining the NSCA 20 years ago and becoming a CSCS forced me to read magazines and read more journals and learn more scientific approaches to things. Learning more about your diet, just a ton of things that come in play. But the big one is to stay humble and keep learning for people.
Awesome.
And these days, as I get older, unfortunately, as you get older, the thing I'm trying to learn more about is mobility now. More mobility work. And stretching, and then nobody heard about mobility 20 years ago. I wish that stuff would have been around then.
Probably would have maybe avoid a couple of those dings and, feel a bit better.
Sure. Everything you hear now, too, mobility and glutes, everything is glutes. Keep your glutes strong. Hip extension, all this kind of training you go to. You want to avoid lower back, SI problems, you got to have your glutes kick in. You want to avoid knee problems, you got to get your glutes strong. It's all these things we keep learning about.
Hey, just like, was it Shakira, the hips don't lie?
Right. Exactly.
So, I guess it's, what's your goal with kind of, how much longer are you hoping to compete in powerlifting, and kind of, what's the next dragon to slay, or is there one that you're kind of looking after or going after?
I don't know. I wish I could tell you I'm gonna keep getting stronger and stronger, and but maybe my better days are behind me. I'm not sure. Maybe it's now just trying to stay strong and keep as strong as I can. I had this blood clot from I competed in Australia 2.5 years ago, and I had the trip back from hell, 16-hour flight anyway from Sydney to LAX, and a lot of turbulence, seatbelt sign on, didn't move around enough, got a blood clot in my calf at DVT. And that has been a really tough 2.5 years since then. That medicine will really make you weak, and I got off the medicine, and I think evidently from what I learned, I wasn't on it long enough, and the clot ended up coming back last year. And so right now I'm just trying to get healthy again. I seem like I'm getting to the tail end of it, but when you put a 50-year-old guy and you have 2 years of not being able to train real hard, I don't know if I'll get it back or not, but I'm definitely still interested in staying strong and, doing some events yet, see what they are.
Yeah.
I was really on a good roll before the puck clock came. And at 47, I went to Russia and won the Open Worlds, IPF Worlds at 47. And then along came the blood clot, kind of let the wind out of the sails a little bit. But so it's always something I love the whole game. So I'm training a little less right now, trying to get healthy, and I'm doing more coaching. I coach my daughter's strength training for my daughter's volleyball team, and some of the same girls play basketball. So basically, the girl athletes at the high school. I've been working with Division II wrestling team here in Marshall, Southwest Minnesota State, with some of their strength training. And kind of doing some more of that stuff, more seminars and stuff lately.
That's awesome. How's your daughter's team doing?
They did great. They made it to the section final. they were ranked fourth in state, but they had to beat the number 3 ranked team in state to go to state, and they got beat in post match. So, but they, boy, I tell you what, you put a good off season and in season strength training program behind girls playing volleyball, especially, adding in some plyometrics, and now all of a sudden these girls that are a little too short, which were a small town team, all of a sudden they're jumping much higher than all the other teams they're playing. I mean, our girls, their vertical jump to the roof from, we do kind of a warm-up of plyometrics, box jumps, some mobility stuff, Spider-Mans, and Bulgarian split squats, and dumbbell jumps, and overhead squats, and then we do a full Olympic squat cleans, and then generally speed squats, 8x2, either box or full squats, and some bench pressing, and all that adds up really good.
Awesome. So, if someone was interested in getting into powerlifting, what's the first piece of advice you'd give them?
Well, you got to learn correct form and be humble on how much weight you're trying to do. One of the things by getting more involved in all this coaching stuff, obviously at our gym, Jackal's gym that we have in Marshall, where we've had a lot of guys go around the world lifting, everybody's got good form there. It's just part of the culture there. But, the more I get up to the high school or the college and I see people, that are trying to squat 200 pounds more than they can, and they're up on their toes, and they're going down about a foot higher than they should be. And you got to tell them you need to learn how to squat right, and then sometimes people's ego won't allow them to do that. That's one thing you got to get over if you're going to, especially if you're going to compete in strength athletics, is you got to learn how to do the lift right. And if you don't, you're going to get hurt, you get injured, and then you're not going to have any success in the meet because you're not going to get your lifts in. So I'd say not being in a big rush, taking your time and just learning how to lift right. Finding some people to surround yourself that have similar goals, that want to train hard, that have some training partners. And if you're going to do strength athletics, you can't just have a training partner. You need to have training partners. A group of at least 3-4 of you that have similar interests. And then most of my training, my whole career has been drug-free. I've been a lifetime drug-free competitor. And so my gains I look at long-term. I mean, you can't, a lot of people try to look too short-term, but, you got to just say, I don't know how to explain this. I've told this to young kids before. If they're 18 and they're benching 225, I tell them if they put on 10, 20 pounds a year, just think if they did that every year until they were 45, what would you be benching? Well, if you put 10 pounds on a year for 20 years, you're going to be benching 4 1/4 raw. But if you put 20 pounds on a year, you're doing 6 1/4 raw. So, strength is kind of an old man's game a little bit. Taking time and being able to appreciate a 20-pound increase in a year. Eventually you can't get 20 pounds a year, but I'm rambling on that one. But
No, I think that's, it's that delayed gratification that can be really rough for some folks. They want to be the hero in a year, and it doesn't work like that unless, certain illicit substances come into play.
Right, and then you can't go long term because you're usually busted up, but for too soon, to reach your maximum potential. One of the things, a big part of my training over the years has been 5x5 squats. So that was always a big point I try to make with the younger lifter. Trying to increase your 5x5 squat. So if you're doing 5x5 at 300, just think how strong you're going to be when you do 5x5 at 400. And just think how strong you'll be when you do 5x5 at 500. Now, I don't have a formula book I can turn to, but, that 300 to 500, that might be 5, 6, 7 years down the road. getting your 5x5 squat from 300 up to 500. That might be 5 or 6 years from now.
Yeah.
But that's what you got to look at, So you get 5x5 over 600, you're deadlifting over 800. You're squatting over 800.
Yeah. You're world class.
Your goals is what the point I'm trying to make. You might need to look 5-10 years down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, you want to go to the IPF World Championships. Well, luckily there's some age group stuff, so you can go as a sub junior or junior till you're 23. But unless you're just really, really gifted, it might take, a lot of these teams are filled with 30, 40-year-old guys, so it might take you 5-10 years to make one of those teams.
Mm-hmm.
So strength is a slow process.
Amen. So, actually, you've done a great job of answering a lot of the questions that I had beyond that, because it's a good answer. Is there anything that you do or recommend that most people don't when it comes to the sport of powerlifting?
No, because I would say if you asked me that question 5 years ago, because 5 years ago Raw really wasn't very prevalent at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the first IPF Raw Worlds was in 2013. They had the World Cup in 2012. So if we look back 5 years, what I was telling everybody is you got to train without your gear more. You got to get strong.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do raw. Get rid of your belt. Really, the only time I put a belt on is when I'm bench pressing, because if you arch, it kind of strains your lower back,
mm-hmm.
which seems strange that you put the belt on when you bench press. And then I put it on when I do rack pulls and really max out. But I rarely lifted any equipment at all except for knee sleeves and wrist wraps. That's it. And that's what I used to always tell everybody. Now, of course, the raw movement is here, so a lot of people you're training raw, but I don't know. The Olympic lifting, adding in different stuff, adding in the Olympic lifts has been big for me. Kind of rotating in one time for a while when I was younger, there was probably maybe for 10 straight years in the wintertime, I had run through two of these 1974 Soviet Union squat set programs. And we turned it into a front squat program, which was front squatting 3 days a week.
Ooh.
Scott Safe had found it for me in some training journal, and we put it into a table, into an Excel spreadsheet, so we could figure it out. 3 day a week, you're doing anywhere from 5-6 sets of 5 to 5-6 sets of 3 days a week, with one light day. One day was like 4 sets of 3 with about 60%. But the final day, I believe, if I remember right, I don't have it in front of me, was 4 sets of 5 and 90%. And those. Maybe that's just torture in itself. So maybe that's some advice. You gotta find a way to push yourself beyond what you think you can do, and even it's not a very comfortable program to do. Some of those killer type programs, but that was a big part of my training for many years.
What what the name of the program was, or otherwise?
Yeah, it's the 1974 Soviet Union squat program. I can email you. The script.
If you please do, I will look on it, and if I'm feeling bold, I might try and do it myself. Because oh my god, that just sounds brutal.
Yeah, what I would do is I didn't deadlift much when I was going through that. I would go through and either do singles or generally singles on Mondays, deadlifting.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing a fair amount of cleans on the Monday, and then the Wednesday is the light. I make that the light day. And actually, in the Soviet Union program, I think they went heavy twice in a row and then light. But we kind of switched that with the heavy, light, heavy, so we'd have a break.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the Fridays, I would go up and do a high bar double and squat.
Huh.
And so maybe week one, that high bar double, just to throw a number out there, maybe it was 500.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would do my 4 sets of 5 or whatever it was, 5 sets of 5. It changes through the program. And then the next week, maybe I'd do 5 1/4 and then 550. And then maybe the last week, the first time through, I'd hit 650 for a double, and then the next time eventually I'd increase that. So I wouldn't do much back squat, and then I'd warm up with a high bar double, and I'd get right into my front squat.
Nice.
It's a great program, especially if you're just looking to change things up. You'll put some size on your quads too, and your back gets really strong, as you know. Big thing with, I always tell a lot of young people that the front squat is actually going to help your bench press. And they're like, "What do you mean?" Well, you got to get a hell of a strong upper back to be able to front squat. Upper back's going to carry over to your bench press. So,
Yeah.
that's why I convince some of the youngsters to front squat. Tell them to help their bench.
Hey, whatever gets them squatting.
Right, whatever, get them squatting and away from the mirror.
Ain't that the truth? So, what's your favorite part of competing?
Man, so many aspects there, and we talked about earlier about how tough it is for me to travel, but I love traveling. That's what I miss right now. I haven't competed much for a couple of years, but I did win the Masters Raw class last year, USAPL, but I wasn't able to go to the Worlds this year because of the clot. But
Mm-hmm.
I haven't competed much for a couple of years, and I miss the traveling. I think I made 30 international trips over the years, competing all the way from South America, South Africa, Taiwan, Japan, all over Eastern Europe, all over Europe, and some of the Caribbean, the Puerto Ricos and Arubas. Just seeing different things is great. Absent from the platform, just being able to travel and go see things because I was, lifting was really good. And then meeting a lot of friends. I got friends from all over the world, all over the country I talk to, just like talking to you today, sitting in Kentucky,
Yeah.
you expand your horizons as you get out and do things. And lifting has allowed me to, through the sponsors I worked for, attend a lot of clinics and meet a lot of people and all over the country. And that's good. And then just the pure competition end of it, stepping out on that stage, especially some of these bigger events, the Arnold deadlift, where there's 5,000-10,000 people out there watching me and going crazy when you're lifting. That's about as high as a guy can get. I mean, it just cranks you up, the crowd and lifting. And then just trying to better yourself too, and all aspects, competing is. And then athletics is kind of a family thing, people are, for us, as athletics, with dad playing pro football, some people grow up on a dairy farm and their family thing is farming, or that thing, or some people are into construction, that's kind of their family thing, or doctors or what have you, and our family thing was athletics, so try to prolong that as long as I can, competing.
Yeah. So, what, aside from obviously powerlifting, and we talked about it a little before we start recording, but what do you like to do for fun?
Oh man, I love hunting. That's probably a big one, right now it's deer hunting season, and I'm trying to chase the whitetail up here in Minnesota. Goose hunting, I like that. Duck hunting. I got 2 daughters that are, I got a sophomore and a senior, and they're real involved in athletics, so I spend a lot of time following their sports. This fall, my oldest daughter is cross country, and my youngest daughter played volleyball, so, I'm just hanging out and following their sports, watching athletics. And summertime, we got lots of lakes up in Minnesota. We got bought an old boat a few years ago. That was probably the best decision I made. Sure isn't anything fancy, but boy, we've had fun just out tearing around, water skiing and tubing, and stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So, since your daughter's in high school age, has there been a guy that's tried to take one of your daughters out for a date, and how terrified was he when he met you?
The good thing, I live in a small town, and I help a lot of high school kids out with their training, and so most of these kids have all either trained with me or they know somebody who has, so they're pretty polite kids, I should say.
I would imagine, your reputation precedes you. They might. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, I hope I don't scare them all off. I guess just some of most of them. I got to scare most of them off, but not all of them. I guess.
Hey, it's quality control. That's all it is. It's quality control. Your daughters will thank you with it.
That's a good statement.
That's awesome. Well, Brad, thank you so much for your time. If people want to learn more about you and your competing and everything else, what would you suggest that they try to look at?
Well, I could Google search me. I got a lot of videos out there, a lot of stuff on the internet. My brother has jackalsgym.com site. He sells Ray-Ban equipment on there, and then he also does a lot of coverage of our events on there. I've got an athlete page on Facebook, so you could go in there and check that out. I update that fairly regular. HMB, I do a monthly blog for MTI HMB. Excellent, supplement HMB. So I write a monthly blog and kind of talk about what I'm up to. I don't know, because I'm seeing a lot of social media stuff, and I'm not really into social media, but I guess all of us are these days. So. Twitter, I got Twitter, so on there. But
awesome.
Yeah, that's probably some good stuff. I got some good videos out there. It's the video craze is kind of a new thing, but it seems like there's always someone that's filming some of the meets and lifts, and I think that we never did talk about mental aspect of lifting, did we?
No. In fact, feel free.
That's been if you look at the videos and see me lift, you're seeing a whole different person than I am. I mean, I have a normal job, working for the state of Minnesota. I'm a pretty docile character. I'm pretty laid back. Raised a couple daughters, but man, when I compete, I put it into a whole different gear mentally. You've probably seen that before.
Yeah, I've seen your videos, and I'm like, and how to say, a guy your size, if you're like that all the time, you don't have any friends, because nobody wants to be hanging out with a guy that big that's that angry.
No, and I'm not. You know me. We've been friends for a few years. I'm about as mellow as they come. I'm kind of a little quiet and shy to a certain degree. But, man, you get me cranked up before deadlifting or something. But, one of the secrets I've always had is that what you see on the platform in that video is not me during the meet, though. One of my real things I was good at is I could turn that on and then turn it off immediately. And so I've never been the kind of guy that's, stalking around in the back room, looking like he's terrorizing. I can be as low-key as they come, and then I can turn on all that adrenaline, and I've always was real gifted at turning that off afterwards. So you don't burn up a lot of wasteful energy,
Yeah. And that's...
There's a few, though. I pulled... They redid some weight classes, so I pulled heavier in other meets, but at the time, the 876 was a IPF world record deadlift I pulled in Pilsen, Czech Republic a couple years back.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you, I literally could have just not even pulled it. I was so convinced I already had made the pull before I even tried to attempt the pull that I'm surprised I didn't just walk off the stage with my hands in the air saying I made it. Because it was that cranked up, and it's amazing how much adrenaline, how your body and mind can help you lift so much more weight if you could just find that place that gets you going.
Mm-hmm. And you feel like that's something pretty much, your entire sporting career that's been something you've been able to tap into pretty well?
Sure, that's been a huge strong point for me. Because sometimes I'm sitting there warming up, and I do my 600-pound pull, and my coaches was my dad, or brothers, or USA PL team coaches over the years, would say, geez, you're going to open up with 804? Man, you better lower your opener. But then all of a sudden, the last pull is maybe 700 or something, and boom, it just flies off the floor because I've kind of cranked it up a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
And there's a real science to that too, mentally, because you should try to do all your lifts the same, but you want to hold back a little bit of that adrenaline for the big ones. You gotta kind of quiet before the storm, so to speak.
Yeah.
Just kind of ramp it up.
If you always mash on the gas pedal, you don't have anything extra gear to go into when you need it.
Yeah, well said. Exactly. You can't just mash that thing down the whole time. You gotta know how to throttle that back a little bit.
Do you think when you were younger, you kind of maybe drove it a little hard more often than you should have, or do you think this is something you've been pretty good at finding that balance?
I was always pretty good with it, but I have over the years been better about shutting it off sooner. I was always able to turn it on and shut it off. I mean, when I first started competing, even at local meets, you'd see guys that just looked like they were mad and angry. They were walking down the hallway with their banana and lunch or whatever in their hand, getting ready to have a snack, and they look like they're going to kill somebody. I was never like that. I was very laid back, but over the years, I've been able to even shut that off and on even more, and just completely go into relax mode, and then boom, you're ready to go, and you can walk through a brick wall.
Flip the switch. Well, I mean, to be fair, with your size, I can imagine walking through a brick wall is a very feasible thing.
Well, I don't know if I would have won, but I think there's times where I had myself convinced I could. Some of those meets, there's just no way you're going to miss, because you already made it. In your head, you already made the lift, so you just got to go out and do it and set it down on the ground.
That's awesome. Well, Brad, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it, and keep doing what you're doing. Hopefully we'll see more of your competing, and obviously hopefully I'll see you at the NSCA this summer and otherwise.
Yeah, I'll be down. I should be down for the summer one, and I think I'll probably be at the winter coaches. What do we call that now? They changed the name on that. It used to be sports specific, but
I think it's Coaches Clinic now. Maybe.
I think I might be at that one. That's in Nashville, I believe, in January. So.
Awesome.
Otherwise, maybe we'll see you this summer.
Sounds great.
And I'll send you that. I'll send you that workout too.
Oh yeah, I'll tell my students if they do it in the spring and survive, I'll give them extra credit.
Sounds good. All right, take it easy.
You too, Brad. Bye-bye.
Yep. Yeah, thank you.